So I bought every single Nintendo Switch 2 launch game. And I mean every single physical game that you'll find on the shelf, game key cards and all. I don't think I would ever have bought every launch game if it wasn't for A, being a YouTuber, and B, having a serious problem. I have spent the last week or so playing pretty much all of these as much as I can. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I haven't finished them all. So this isn't so much an in-depth review of each of these games, but how each one performs and runs on the Switch, and then a little bit about the game and why maybe you should buy it if it sounds interesting to you. Also, if you are new here, this eye isn't usually ballooned up like this. I have a sty that I get whenever I'm overly tired and stressed because I'm rubbing my eye all the time. Why am I tired and stressed, you might be asking? Well, I've already mentioned my new son once, and also the Switch 2 just came out, and I'm making a lot of videos, so subscribe. First up is Yakuza Zero, and it's first not only because it's one of the more impressive ports of a game to this console, both technically and also content-wise, but because they're sponsoring the video. Yeah, that kind of worked out perfectly. You might have heard this leading up to Switch 2 launch, but yeah, Yakuza Zero was being used as one of the bars for how great Switch 2 was looking because it was actually performing and running and resolutioning better than the PlayStation 4 Pro version. Because docked, you're hitting that actual 4K at 60 FPS. It even has updated textures with a higher resolution than before. And in handheld mode, it does drop down to 1080p 720, but you're still getting that 60 FPS. And I absolutely love Yakuza games. Yakuza Zero is also canonically the first game, so if you've never played a Yakuza, this is actually the best place to start day one on Switch 2, which is perfect. So Yakuza Zero is one of the best Switch 2 launch games because it adds 25 extra minutes of new cutscenes, a new online multiplayer mode, and an English dub added for the first time. Yeah, I kid you not, if you're a fan of this series or even this game, there is so much extra content in the Switch 2 release, and I love when developers actually work on adding content to a Switch port rather than just throwing the game on the console. The combat is what this series is known for, as it's absolutely visceral fun, and it has seemingly endless side missions and experiences. And this is because the full title of the game is Yakuza Zero Director's Cut. I can't gas it up enough, and it's not just because they're sponsoring. I love Yakuza games. They are so wildly popular for a reason, and I just love that this Switch 2 version has extra content and runs better than it does on the PlayStation 4 Pro. So if you want to check out the game, and you really should, I'll leave links down below. Click on that and go check out Yakuza Zero Director's Cut on Nintendo Switch 2. You can get it on the eShop or in stores like I did. Thank you, Yakuza, for sponsoring. We'll keep going. We should definitely talk about Mario Kart World next. And I will keep it brief because I've already made a whole video on my channel talking about this game, and you can go and watch that. But if it's your first time here, this is obviously one of the best performing games on the console because Nintendo made it themselves. In fact, they wanted to make this Mario Kart on the last Switch, but the Switch 1 couldn't handle it, so they had to wait to launch it with Switch 2. The reason why the Switch 1 couldn't handle it? This bad boy has 4K visuals, 60 FPS, and in handheld mode, it's 1080p and 60 FPS. You really couldn't ask for any better other than maybe 120 FPS, which this doesn't do, even though someone at the Nintendo New York experience told me that it does. And I thought that it did because of that, and they apparently were just wrong. But my friend Bob did some testing on the frame rate, and he said there's a weird smoothing effect that happens when you're playing in handheld mode that actually makes it look like it's running faster than 60 FPS even though it's not. This game does some magic wizardry and just looks phenomenal. It is still so weird to me to load up a Nintendo-made game running on Nintendo hardware and even just see the carts in high fidelity, clean visuals, light glistening off of the tailpipes. Like, it's just not what I'm used to with Nintendo. It really does feel like their version of next gen, and I love it. While it obviously has the traditional Grand Prix mode, you can also just go explore all of those tracks in the big open world that they're all sat in. That's the big draw to this one, as well as the new knockout mode, which comes in because it's an open world with all the courses connected. Now you have to try and beat other people to checkpoints and not be at the back of the pack, or else you'll get knocked out of the run early. The best way I can equate it is almost like a Fortnite Battle Royale version of Mario Kart. This is the flagship launch game, and if you're looking at getting a Switch, chances are it comes with the console in the bundle, and if it doesn't, you're probably gonna want to get it. But get it in the bundle because it's not $80 in the bundle. Nintendo's other published games on the console, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, these games came out on Switch 1, and if you've already bought them, you can upgrade to these new versions on the Switch 2 for just $10 without having to buy them again, like I clearly did. Or if you pay for the most expensive expansion pack, Nintendo Switch Online, which also gives you access to GameCube games and a bunch of other rewards, you'll get these expansion packs for free in that. So yeah, you really don't have to go out and buy these unless you don't already have them, or, as I said earlier, unless you have some kind of problem. So no matter how you play these games, handheld or docked, you're going to get 60 FPS, which is incredible playing these games in such a high frame rate. And then docked, you're going to get upscaled 4K, I believe at 1440p. And then in handheld mode, it's going to have native 1080p. These games utilize 120 Hz support, HDR, as well as variable refresh rates. So it's doing a lot of magic to make these games look and play so well. And as someone who, and don't tell Nintendo, not like they already don't know, has emulated these games before in 4K and 60 frames, this is a much better way of doing that. It's also nice just to play the official games on the official hardware. I mean, you even get connectivity with mobile phones and the Nintendo app now, so that you can do things like have an in-game GPS or even send items to friends or hear voice notes around the world. There's a ton of extra features using the mobile app. Now, for some reason, leading up to launch, a lot of people like to compare the Switch 1 to Switch 2 versions of Breath of the Wild and say, oh, look at this generational upgrade from Nintendo. That's not really how that works. You can't just take an older game and throw it on better hardware and expect it to look different. It's still the same game. It's just gonna run better and have better resolutions. That's exactly what we're seeing here, and it's a huge upgrade. Before we go down Game Key Alley, let's take out one game that did not utilize a game key and instead is an actual cartridge, which I've taken out of here, so you'll have to believe me. But also, they even have a little pamphlet manual instruction booklet in here, which I am a huge fan of. So even though this isn't a game key card release, it did actually take 20 minutes to install the game over Wi-Fi, which I thought was weird at first, and then I learned that the cartridge that comes in here is actually the Switch 1 version of the game on a red cart that proxies the Switch 2 upgrade just when you stick it into your console. It just does it automatically and it upgrades to it. Now, you might be thinking that's weird, but it's actually kind of cool because it means if you take this Switch 2 red cart and put it in your Switch 1, it works. So this is yet another 60 FPS game in both handheld and docked. The Switch 1 version is only 30 FPS and a very low resolution, and that Switch 2 version really does feel like we've just upgraded to a PlayStation 4 Pro or Xbox Series S, and suddenly everything is clean, crisp, and so much better. So this game is the next mainline entry in the Rune Factory series, and it takes a farming sim and an action RPG gameplay and even a narrative-driven post-apocalyptic setting and just kind of smashes it all together. You can kind of think of this game as like Stardew Valley meets Breath of the Wild. Kind of. Okay, we got to get into some of these game key cards now, starting with Street Fighter 6. So from what I've experienced in the arcade fighter mode, I had no problems, baby. This game looked phenomenal, and it runs at a very steady 60 FPS. And I don't think people appreciate what we came from to what we have. The Switch 1 launched with Street Fighter 2 Remix, the Super Nintendo version. This one's launching with Street Fighter 6 in 60 FPS. I mean, the Switch 1 couldn't even handle the last Mortal Kombat. Everything about this console is feeling like such a huge, obvious upgrade. So messing around with this arcade mode and 1v1 fights is super fun and runs really well. It's the hub world story mode where you actually take control of characters and walk around and meet other characters. That mode, for some reason, runs at 30 FPS. It chugs a little more, and visually it's not as appealing. I'm not really sure why these two modes feel so separated. I suppose one's easier to handle than the other, but I still think the Switch 2 should be able to handle both, so I'm not really sure what happened here. Besides the point, though, you might have gathered that this fighter is more than just a traditional fighter. It has a whole single-player mode that you can dive into with a story, and actually a ton of other modes as well. If you're new to fighters or you haven't played many, I gotta say Street Fighter is probably my favorite traditional fighting game. One of the launch games that I have to talk about, because it's a launch game, is Hogwarts Legacy. Now, there's a lot of controversy around this game, and I don't usually love talking about it or exposing exposing it too much, but unfortunately, it is a prime example of how good the Switch 2 is because we have a direct comparison with the Switch 1 version that only just released last year. That while it was a technical marvel that it was even on the console, and shout out to whoever had to port that, it was ugly and it ran at like 20 FPS and they had to do weird fixes to it to make it even work on the console, like separate the open world into load screens. But thankfully, that's one of the first things that has been completely removed and unrestricted in this Switch 2 version, as well as a huge boost in quality. As I said, the Switch 1 version could barely hit 20 FPS. Here, we're at a much more rock-steady 30 FPS, and visually, the whole game is just reinvented. It is the most stark side-by-side comparison I think we have. It really truly is a whole new game. At first, it didn't look like we were getting any kind of upgrade path, but there is one. If you already have the first one and you want to upgrade to this new one, you can. And funny enough, if you don't want to, Switch Up ran some tests of the Switch 1 version, just brute forcing it on the Switch 2 with no upgrade, and it actually fixes the frame rates to back to 30, but the game is still butt ugly, so I would not recommend that. Keen observers might have noticed there is actually one game missing from my physical collection, and while I have ordered it from GameStop, Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD doesn't arrive until the weekend, and I wanted to film this video already. So this is the one game I personally haven't tried yet, but I will have tried it before this video comes out, and if anything I say is off base, I'll make an edit. I'm just gonna go by what I've seen online and what other people are saying about this one. It's also a game keycard game. This game is a HD remaster of a 3DS game, so the side-by-side comparisons are fairly obvious, and with this game being such a cult classic and one of the most beloved JRPGs of all time, it's pretty safe to say that this new enhanced visual and performing version is well overdue and also very welcomed. It's locked at 60 FPS now. It has a wider aspect ratio, enhanced visuals. As I said, this is one of the most highest rated JRPGs of all time, and I think it's really an underlooked gem on this launch cycle because the remaster is new. This is a new game for the Switch 2 launch, but this is a special release that it gives players something different on launch day, a little bit of nostalgia and a little bit of new. I love that the Switch 1 released with Puyo Puyo Tetris and the Switch 2 released with Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. I don't love that it's another game keycard. Guys, it's Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. It's a puzzle game. If you play Tetris, you know that whole side of it, but they mash it with another puzzle game called Puyo Puyo. It's an enhanced sequel built for the Switch 2, bringing back the chaotic fun of Puyo Puyo and Tetris with sharper visuals, faster load times, and brand new gameplay modes. It's a puzzle game. You see it. You get it. Hitman is a special one, and yeah, it's a game key card. I'm sick of saying that, but it is a special release on the Switch because this is the first game that we have that was on Switch 1 via the cloud service that actually has a... well, I don't want to say physical, but an actual non-streaming online release. Not only does this have that Hitman 3 cloud-based game, but not cloud-based anymore, it also has Hitman 1 and 2. Docked, you're getting 1080p with unlocked frame rates bouncing between 30 to 60 FPS. Handheld, you're getting 720 with unlocked frame rates between 30 to 50 FPS. And you might be thinking that seems a little lower than some of the other games we've talked about, and it is. I mean, Hitman is a fairly demanding game visually, but I think one of the biggest things that bogs it down is it's known for having insane, giant, dense crowds of people. That's kind of one of the coolest niches of the game, is that you're playing this stealth game and there can be up to 100 other NPCs on the screen at any time, which is pretty taxing on hardware, especially something like the Switch. But regardless of the resolution, you have those high dense crowds, you have high frame rates, and you have really clean visuals that are actually really impressive to see. I mean, we're seeing real-time shadows here, reflections, lighting effects, higher quality textures, things that you would typically get stripped out of Switch ports, they're now here. It is a really pretty game on the Switch 2. I do feel like, considering I've seen games like Cyberpunk and what they can do when they're fully optimized for the console, this does feel more like a port that was just drag and dropped onto the system, and they're just allowing the Switch 2's new raw power to just brute force its way through playing this game. It's not super well optimized. honest, I think they could have pushed it further, but the Switch 2 is getting this game to look and run really good, so I guess I can't complain. There isn't any new content here that I could find other than a DLC code that comes in the box for a Mario and Luigi themed outfit, and I accidentally leaked these codes in my last video before I got a chance to use them, so whoever beat me to that, I hope you're enjoying them. If you're sick of hearing me talk about game key carts on each one of these, don't worry, I got something even worse for you. I love Split Fiction. I love the game. I love the developers. That whole dev team is dedicated to making fun and unique co-op experiences, and I'm absolutely here for that. However, you know what's different from this box to any of the game key card boxes? Yeah, that's right. This one doesn't say game key card. So I didn't think it had a game key card, and it doesn't. What it does have is a download code in the box. It doesn't have a cartridge at all. Nothing. It's a code. It's a code. Two things here. One, you might be thinking, what? But there is that white. But yeah, I wasn't looking for that because I was looking for that. And second, why would they do this when a game key card is essentially the same thing? A bit of plastic. Just get the game key card. That's the whole point. Well, besides that, I have played it, and it's really impressive when you compare this game to PlayStation 5, for example. Really, again, showing off what the Switch 2 can do, and even this game is fairly new. This game only came out in the last year. It's up for Game of the Year this year. I do feel like this is possibly another Hitman situation, though, where they just kind of drag and drop to the game on the console because there's no extra content. It doesn't feel super optimized. It's only running at 1080p 30 FPS, and I do feel like this game could push a little more than that. Another telling sign is that the download is 75 gigs, meaning it's a bigger download than most of the games we're looking at today. That's a telltale sign that the game isn't really been optimized for the console. But regardless, it is still an extremely fun game. You play as a fiction writer and a fact writer who go to work at this company to essentially sell their stories. And this company has this weird device where you can plug in, you can jack into the Matrix and actually live the stories that you write. But they end up getting mixed into the same jacked in, and they start bouncing between a broken system of just both their stories flip-flopping from one side to another. You never know what to expect, and it's a wild, fun ride. Who would have guessed it? You gotta go fast into another game key card. I said I wouldn't talk about it, but then I felt obligated to mention it every time. Sonic and Shadow Generations. This is the only game that was on Switch 1 that now has a Switch 2 version that has absolutely no upgrade path. Meaning you just have to buy the whole game again, even if you literally just bought it on Switch 1, as this game is not that old. That is extremely disappointing, and I'm not sure why they did that. However, it's a very impressive port of the game. So the Sonic Generations part of it, which is an older game at this point, it's locked at 60 FPS and has 1080p, while the Shadow campaign, that's the new content, which, by the way, on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, the Shadow portion of this game could not be played at 30 FPS. You had to go to PlayStation 5 to get the performance and quality settings to actually hit 60. And guess what? On Switch 2, you of course have performance and quality settings, and the performance is of course 60 FPS. It looks fantastic in handheld mode. The load times are on par with the PlayStation 5 in Sonic Generations, and for Shadow's Generations, not only are we getting the faster frame rates, but the load times are twice as fast as PlayStation 4 and Xbox. And if you haven't played these games, by the way, a lot of people, including me, consider Sonic Generations to be the last really good Sonic game. I would have nothing but good things to say about this if it wasn't for the no upgrade path thing really putting a damper on it. And finally, I mean it when I say I saved the best till last. While I have a storied history with Cyberpunk, and this is not in any way a review of the whole game, I want to play this start to finish. I want to juice it. I want to see everything they've changed and upgraded from the base game since I played it back all those years ago. I'm working on that. But this is a pretty heavy endorsement of the work they put into this Switch 2 port specifically, because by golly, it impresses me. To start with, you will notice this is a full art box, meaning it is not a game key card. Cyberpunk splurged on the full 64 gigabyte red cartridge from Nintendo, meaning the whole game is on the cartridge, which is a very rare thing to see these days across discs or cartridges for video games. Next, they actually added content on the inside of the case with a sticker pack and a pamphlet. That's more brownie points from me. Next, it contains all of the Phantom Liberty DLC, which notoriously was not even in the PlayStation 4 version because that console couldn't even handle it. Next, they worked so closely with the Switch and Nintendo leading up to launch. They have completely reinvented the control scheme, so you have traditional controls, you also have full mouse support, and even intuitive, weird and wacky Nintendo Wiimote motion controls. Everything down from having to reload your gun by twisting your wrist or to heal yourself by flicking up your left hand. I would still rather sit there with a controller, but I can't lie to you, as soon as I turn on those motion controls and the pinpoint aiming and all of that, I am blasting through the levels and the gunfights with such ease, and I'm landing so many more of my shots. It's just not my preferred way, but wow, if they didn't really make this work. The last thing that impresses me is obviously just the way the game looks on the console. It was one of the first things I wanted to show Kim, like an excited boy on Christmas. I booted up the game and I was like, Kim, look at this. And even she couldn't believe it. So you gotta remember, this game is very intensive, with most of my powerful handheld PCs not being able to run this game above 20 FPS. So you have performance and quality modes. Performance mode is gonna give you 40 FPS whether you're on handheld or TV, and quality is going to give you 30 FPS whether you're handheld or TV. The difference is when you're handheld, the performance mode's going to dip you down from 720, while quality mode's going to keep you at that full resolution 1080, and docked, weirdly, they're both 1080. So I think in quality mode, what it's doing is it's working on AI upscaling and making the resolution more consistent, while also just improving the overall visual quality and all of the textures and everything else that's happening around the world to make it look nice. There's a lot of conjecture on how this game actually runs and what the native resolution actually is and what it's AI upscaling to. But to be honest, what I can tell you is when I'm sitting there playing it docked on my TV, it looks phenomenal. And I play in performance mode just to get the extra 10 frames, and I still think it looks insane. It does not feel like something that should be running portably, that should be able to play like this. This Cyberpunk port is so exciting for so many reasons, because not only is it showing off what this console can do, but the possibilities for future ports and games. I will wait to give my future thoughts on the game until I've played more of it, but I have been very impressed with everything they've done for Switch 2. And that's it. That's every single Nintendo Switch 2 launch game, at least the physical ones. There's actually probably another 10 or so that are digital eShop only, and if you don't know me, I have a series on this channel where I review eShop games. I am so excited to make my first eShop games worth buying for Nintendo Switch 2 video, and that's where I'll talk about all of those games. So if you want to see that, you got to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I never talk about the bell. There's a bell, you know, I think that still helps. Let me know what you've been playing, what your favorite Switch 2 port is so far, and why. Remember, if you're going to check out any of the games today, there's a link in the description to Yakuza. That'd be a great one to check out, either on the eShop or you could buy it physically, but you know. And I'll see you in the next video, hopefully when my eye looks better.